My name is John Campion and I'm the West Mercia Police and Crime Commissioner, and welcome to the latest of my public assurance and accountability sessions. So we've had rural crime as a focus over a long period of time. We've made a significant amount of money available, whether that be rural and business crime officers, all the way through to crime prevention activities focused on our rural communities. But I also know that there isn't such a thing as rural crime. There's not a crime that is just bespoke to one rural community. So we don't get much sheep theft in the middle of Telford, but it is a point that we do know that rural crime isn't a bespoke crime on its own. So therefore, understanding how West Mercia Police are responding to it, and indeed making sure our communities can have confidence in the service that they receive. And lastly, it's an opportunity for yourself, Richard, to articulate not only current performance, but where the organisation is headed in terms of priority and those other improvements that I'm sure, will get to. So the first area is around consistency of service. Around a third of our population lives in a rural community in West Mercia, that fourth largest police area in England and Wales. So that does come with a huge number of challenges, of course, but also it means that our communities sometimes will be based in very remote locations and sometimes in built-up urban areas, but their expectations are often the same. We also know we have a record number of police officers. We have a huge investment in technology, but ultimately, whether or not we are meeting the aspirations of our community is something that I would like to talk to you about around consistency. So we're going to hear first video.
Very close, well, we're from Hagley, very close to West Mids and South Staffordshire. Yes, we have big issues with West Mercia and West Mids and Staffordshire police communicating with each other. Okay. There've been several occasions when there's been no communication between the three constabularies.
We farm on the Herefordshire-Worcestershire border, and I'm just listening to John Meek, realising how lucky we are that we're on the border, because I think we've benefited from it, despite being in Worcestershire. So I think what I wanted to say is a few things. The first is all the interactions we've had as a family have been positive. I've got nothing negative to say at all. And I've been really impressed with the young, slightly inexperienced people that I've met and those with more experience, and their hearts all seem to be in the right place.
First of all, thanks very much to the Rural Police PC Philip Knock, who very effectively removed some bikers from fields near to us, and he's been very active in this. And so I wanted to acknowledge where the policing has been very good. And
so we're sort of right on the border of Shropshire and Staffordshire, sort of all between the two. I'm wondering what work is done, or whether there's any sort of cross agreements. So if I call something in to West Mercia, will Staffordshire be informed that there's an officer placer in that force?
So I think really interesting sets of views, pretty consistent around the pro-police element of, we get pockets of really good service. At the beginning of that video clip, there is some element that maybe the service in Herefordshire perceived to be slightly better than the service in Worcestershire by some of those Worcestershire residents. I'm really interested in how you as a chief do set a system that provides some consistency of service, because communities will be different in Rubery as they are in Ross-on-Wye, using that as an example, and how you ensure that people get that level of consistent response across your large geography.
Thank you. I think there needs to be a balance, doesn't there? Because we want communities to receive the service that they would benefit most from. So not a one size fits all service, because the nature of the three counties is very different. But where there are similarities, either in the geography or in the nature of the issue that's being dealt with, then I think we should aim for a consistent service and a consistently high service. So I'd be reticent about using the phrase minimum expectations, but you're right that if someone is subject to a theft of plant, for example, in Herefordshire and Worcestershire, that there should be an expectation that at a basic level, the service received is of a certain standard. So we do certain things to ensure that's the case. We have the local policing charter, which sets out a series of commitments which has been worked up with your office, Commissioner, regarding expectations of local people can have of their neighbourhood policing teams. And we try and share information and good practice across the local policing areas in terms of how things are done. So there are regular team meetings for Safe Build neighbourhood teams, where not only do they exchange information regarding things that they're dealing with, but they will talk about the manner of the work that they are doing so that we can try and make it more consistent. And we are making some changes to the way that the force is led and structured to try and increase that consistency of practice so that people can have a greater expectation that those on the Herefordshire side of the border, for example, are expecting to receive a level of service that can be replicated elsewhere. And there's some small examples I can give of where we've done things to ensure that we are raising the tide of people's knowledge. In this particular sphere, fairly recently, there was a training video produced with the assistance of some of our rural and business crime officers handling of livestock. So that on those occasions when it may be during the night and patrol officers are those on duty that they have received some ability or they've got a repository of knowledge to go to from their more experienced colleagues around this is how we should do those things so that we can increase the knowledge across the organisation of those key factors affecting rural communities.
Have you got an assessment at the moment around, and I don't want to call it a minimum offer either, but that consistency of the things that you care about the West Mercia Police should be doing in terms of responding, being visible, and indeed ultimately successfully detecting across your local policing areas, with particular thought around rural communities about the consistency at the moment. Do you think it's consistent at the moment? Do you think there's more work to be done about to make it more consistent?
This may sound like a politician's answer.
That's my side of the day.
Indeed. So I say that with caution. I have general expectations regarding the level of service that we provide, so that we answer the phone to people, that we show interest when we do so in the problem that they are experiencing, that we provide a professional and compassionate response, and that where there are lines of inquiry for us to pursue, that we pursue them efficiently, effectively, and we keep people updated regarding the steps that we're taking. My word of caution arises from the fact that if we try and be very precise regarding, and in this example of theft of delivery, we will do X, or in this example of shoplifting, we will do X, it's very difficult to attend to every circumstance given the broad range of issues that policing responds to. And also sometimes, in terms of an immediate response, the level of challenges that we may be facing at a particular time mean that we would aspire to dispatch an officer within 10 minutes if it was an emergency, or 2 hours if it was something that required our prompt response, but we are managing the level of demand that's facing us. So in terms of, I'm reticent regarding making specific assurances regarding very precise matters, but in terms of some of those key challenges facing some of our rural communities, crime that affect their livelihood, the theft of very significant pieces of equipment that are not just part of their working environment, but because of the places where they live, they're part of the home environment as well. I would expect us to show interest, to identify reasonable lines of inquiry, follow them up diligently, and keep people updated regarding what we're doing.
So I do get why you're hesitant to give a specific answer, because I don't necessarily disagree with what you've just described, but answer it in a different way then. So where somebody feels they've got a good effective business crime officer, has been described in that video, when they're not on duty, they don't necessarily feel safe. But you and I both know there's a significant number of police resources in the system outside of those singular points. Asking it a different way then, do you think the effect of the auspices of West Mercia are felt across our communities?
I think they're felt across our communities. I think they're experienced unevenly, and the comments of the members of the public would suggest that was the case. So I think it is a reasonable expectation, as is the case at the moment, that everyone ultimately has access to the expertise of a rural and business crime officer. Part of their role is in terms of educating the rest of the workforce to try and raise standards as I've described. It is entirely reasonable that everyone has access to a local neighbourhood officer. So in addition to those rural crime officers, that there is a named neighbourhood officer who has responsibility for a manageable part of the geography, perhaps alongside a police and community support officer, to deal specifically with those ongoing problems of crime, safety on the road and antisocial behaviour. And then in terms of the wider organisation, I understand why people may feel that they receive a particularly good service from some of those people who provide expertise in the force, as we've heard from in that video. But policing continues 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. My colleagues will be working Christmas Day, Boxing Day and every other bank holiday, occasionally missing significant events for themselves. And I say that with no desire for thanks. That's what we will do. That's what we're here to do. We are here to provide a 24/7 policing service of high quality. But we match the resource to the demand. And during the day, our specialists around rural crime are able to have greatest influence in terms of access to most of their peers, access during daytime hours to those who they need to liaise with in terms of the public, farmers and other members of the rural community, developing intelligence on offenders with our intelligence teams. And they will, of course, occasionally take part in perhaps nighttime enforcement activity themselves. But we have a large number of officers in the main who are working round the clock, and the service during the night becomes more one of patrol and response. So where there are hotspots of identified criminality, we can target our patrol towards those locations, but they also provide a response to whatever happens, whatever the public need us for. So if there is a crime committed during the night, certainly a crime in progress, that is affecting a isolated or remote part of the force, that person and that member of the public is just as entitled to a good, prompt and effective response as someone living in the centre of Worcester, Kidderminster or Telford.
Yeah. Could I raise, in the video we heard a number of comments about people who live on the border of West Mercia with other forces. I just wondered, Chief, if you'd like to talk about how West Mercia Police works effectively with our neighbouring forces to tackle those cross-border. We know criminals don't respect those borders. How do we deal with criminals who offend in more than one area?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The borders are of no importance to those who commit crime. We will generally respond to matters affecting our force area. There will be occasions where we have the ability to contact forces on our border to seek assistance in terms of providing an immediate response. The bulk of the work, though, goes on in terms of ongoing activity. So there are shared intelligence platforms that we have access to. We are each able to see markers that other forces have applied, perhaps to target nominals or vehicles who we would seek to target. And then we very frequently share information regarding people who are of interest to us and take part in planned shared operations looking at particular problems and individuals of note. So there's some immediate response that takes place in terms of if we need assistance or if we can go across the border into Staffordshire, then we will occasionally do so. The bulk of the shared working acknowledges the fact that criminals move across borders, and we will target the individuals rather than just targeting the offences that individual has committed on our ground.
Thank you. You alluded to it slightly earlier, as in implementing a new model for policing. When we talk about consistency, what What do you think are some of the benefits around what that new model might deliver to our, particularly around our rural communities?
So the model is most easily understood in terms of structure, but what we're really seeking to achieve is consistent levels of approach and practice. So we are trying to achieve a model of delivery that means that we draw fewer internal boundaries, going back to Mark's point in terms of, well, that's not my line to cross, so therefore I won't respond. So in terms of our rural communities, access to a greater pool of officers who perceive it as their role to police that particular area. And it may not be in terms of the closest station that they work from, but reducing some of the sense of internal boundaries of responsibility that occasionally impinge on our ability to provide an immediate service. More important than that, though, I think, is creating a greater sense internally of what we can do. So there are more officers, as we've said before, in West Mercia than there ever have been in our past. It doesn't always feel like that to the public, and I don't think it always feels like that to the organisation, because we have grown in some areas small pockets of capability. And our model is looking to go back to really reinforcing those key functions of response, of local neighbourhood officers and of local investigators working together to provide a consistent response. So we're slightly reducing the number of command areas in the force with the goal that bigger teams of officers feel more resilient, they therefore feel more capable to go and provide a proactive service. And there are fewer ways of doing things across the organisation. So going back to the consistency point, it's easier to influence a smaller group of leaders regarding how we should do things than it is a wider group of leaders adopting different models locally.